Good afternoon and welcome back to another ironic introduction to another video. Today I'm going to be giving a brief overview of the Dev Diary champions of the contest as well as my thoughts and opinions. I'm going to go through a lot of this very quickly because honestly it's very fluffy and we only have like a small amount of information that's actually concrete or worth chewing or talking about. So first we'll start with champion design vision. So essentially the game is different, the champion design has grown, but the core ideas of fun, unique, and interesting champions is still present. It's kind of a good summary there, so that's nice to know. Why do I want this champion? Summoner desires are different. They have new stuff in the works and they are still taking feedback on current champions / working to improve that over time. Champion complexity, because the champions in the game have been growing ever more complex as they release them, so they recognize this. They are handling this, trying to introduce more pre-fights and cross-fights to kind of change where the complexity is. They also want to have less complex kits, but maintain the strong impact of champions on the game. So that'll be present as well. This next part is interactive but predictable. This is all about the technical language and like champions' abilities not confining to a rule set or the rule set not being clear. So here they say they want to improve the technical language consistency going forward. They want to clean up older / current inconsistencies and then have a clear reference for and communication of the rules of the game. This is a really big one for me. I feel like when we see bug fixes that sound more like nerfs, that draws a huge amount of frustration from the player base. Or if you read a node and you're like, oh, this works this way, and then you go and you do it and you're like, oh, that's not working as intended, or it turns out it is, and it's just a poorly phrased node design, etc., and not the player's fault, just kind of the node being not clear. That's incredibly frustrating. So I really like this part here in particular. I just want to spend a brief moment talking about it. Technical language is incredibly fundamental in a game, kind of preventing those frustrations, but also allowing players to approach a node or a problem just from the text is so important. It is so crucial to a game like MCOC that we can read a node, read a champion's abilities, and understand how the interactions work just from the text. Because that has so much of an impact on the game, especially considering you're not always going to have the champion to playtest, so you need to understand how they work. So yeah, I do like that bit there. Next we'll talk about champion balancing. So essentially they want to add value to underperforming champions. They've got so much of commitment that they've dedicated an entire team to this. They recognize that nerfs will be occasional but necessary, and this will partially take into account the effort to gain a champion, rank up resources, etc. So hopefully that means some form of compensation if the nerf is relevant enough. But their main priority is to buff up the bottom end of the champion pool first before any potential nerfs, and I think this will kind of mitigate any kind of frustrations as a result of nerfs as long as we see a good amount of buffs first. Good news, we do have a buff roadmap, and this is where we start getting really solid information, so I'll kind of slow my roll here. So the buff roadmap, they are going to categorize the four categories and then put all the champions into these 4 categories. So the first one is balanced, champions that are good enough for now or better. These are champions that are essentially just going to cross off their list of champions that they don't need to address. Then they've got tune-ups. They don't want to change any of the abilities, they just need to tune up the numbers, kind of like Torture Sentry. So this is really good. Maybe a champion just needs a little bit more oomph or a little more consistency in them in order to be good enough to use or see value. So I imagine this is like Torch or Annihilus closer to, although Annihilus, well, it's questionable use there as an attacker. Third, there is update, so we'll see minor changes, kind of like Red Hulk or Carnage, either in ability changes or numbers, maybe a mix of both, but the idea of the champion will remain the same. And then finally, Overhaul. This will be a whole new kit, kind of like Hulkbuster or Colossus, where the entire champion itself is fundamentally different and not just like a small, oh, I just need to know, oh, there's a little more value here. So those are the 4 categories, and they're going to do this buff rotation in a build rotation of 1, 2, 3, and then cycle back to 1. So first we're going to get an overhaul, then a tune-up, and then an update, and we already know the next 3 in this order. So the first one, starting in September, is going to be a double overhaul of Magneto. Both Magneto versions are getting an overhaul, and there's going to be separate overhauls, which is really cool. In October, we're going to see Punisher 2099 get tuned up, so probably just some number changes around there. And then in November, we're going to get Gambit and Falcon updates, which I think is really cool because I feel like Gambit and Falcon have a lot of potential based on their base kit if like their kit just felt a little more relevant. So that's pretty cool as well. So that said, I want to talk about Magneto. So Magneto, there's going to be just regular Magneto, which will have a focus on his villainous side, his ability to hunt down metal champions. And then Magneto Marvel Now will have a focus on his redemptive side, his ability to enhance metal teammates. So I'm not sure how they're going to do the Magneto Marvel Now unless it's a series of cross fights and synergies, which is like my prediction. Just because like when you say enhancing metal teammates, like that screams crossfight abilities to me. Just in personally, like it could be synergies, and I'm sure there's going to be synergies there, but for it to feel impactful, I feel like it would either need to be a pre-fight that you can trigger with Magneto and then use other champions with, or crossfight abilities kind of like Mr. Fantastic, and then hopefully the original Magneto becomes, you know, the powerhouse that we all believe he should be, because he should be. This is probably one of the most commonly talked about rework champions I hear from the community, so I hope it comes. I really, really do. As far as like excitement for me, I'm not super hyped. I don't personally have a vested interest in Magneto. I've seen the X-Men movies. I just don't personally care. I don't mind Magneto, or maybe that's just bias because he always punches me in the face with a special too. But yeah, overall, I think that's going to be really, really cool. Can't give much more than that because they didn't give us too much information to work off of. But they do give us a tease that there is going to be an even more iconic duo that Magneto is part of, which I do still believe is either going to be Charles Xavier entering the game, Professor X, or Mystique. I kind of hope it's Mystique, but I know people are also raving for Professor X. Either one is going to be great, but I do personally hope it's Mystique. That said, we'll move into completing the roster. So here they talk about, you know, adding 5 stars to the game. Wolverine is going to officially launch in July, not just a limited offer. Scarlet Witch will be coming in this summer. They had wanted to add her later, to like add her during the release of WandaVision, but they're moving it up just because I think of like the player pressure of that desire. They're also aiming to add like the other 5 stars that are missing into the pool as well, but they want to change the base pool and the way we kind of pull our crystals here, which we'll talk about next. So this is really cool. So essentially they're adding class-based crystals, and it's going to be dual class. So it's going to be mutant skill, science mystic, cosmic tech, or maybe they'll change up the way they do that, but at least that currently that's how that is, based off of like class advantage, class disadvantage, right? Or at least fundamentally basic there, going through the wheel. So that's really, really cool. Essentially, that's going to take the 5-star pool and cut it into thirds and give you a lot more selectivity, and then it's going to rotate every 24 hours. So one day it'll be one set, the next day it'll be the next, and then the next day after that it'll be the next, and then it'll just rotate every 24 hours. So if you are looking for a particular class, you might end up having to wait. I don't like that implementation, but I do love the implementations of a class-based crystal. This was actually my recommendation, that they do a class-based crystal. I thought they only needed to do like, you know, mutant science cosmic or something like that. I didn't think they needed to dump it down into 2s, but dumping it down to 2s is even better. I love it, and honestly, hopefully one day I would like to see the option of a singular class, inevitably when the pool gets even bigger than it is now. They also want to improve the 5 and 6-star featured hero crystals. Essentially, they want them to feel like they're worth it, and they want it to not suck as much when you get a total miss. So that's pretty cool. I do think the current 5-star featured is like the first featured that's worth pulling a 5-star on in a long while, so that's really cool as well. They want to introduce the Wish Crystal, which is essentially, here it's represented as a Cavalier Crystal, but essentially the player will get to choose champions from each class to be in the crystal, and then you open the crystal. That's cute. I think that's neat. But like right off the gate, I hate this idea. To me, this is just like the alternative option to giving players the option to choose a champion, and I don't like it. Like, to me, this is so much RNG, and like even if I like quickly pulled up all the champions in a class, like I wouldn't personally always be able to choose 5 champions, because honestly, like the difference between like my top 2 in this category and like my top 3 can be very very large. Like in science, if I didn't have Quake, Quake would by and far be my number one, and then after that I would be settling for other options. And science is not like a great category option because there's a lot of really good options in science, honestly. But then I look at skill, and like for the longest time I was only looking for Aegon, and that was it. So if you were like, oh, choose 5 in skill, I'd be like Aegon and 4 others. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of other great options in skill. It's just so often you're literally fishing for one champion that I just feel like this Wish Crystal isn't great. What I would have really liked to see was a option to see like multiple like a Cavalier Crystal, but you only choose like one, or honestly just like a full select. Other games have a full select, and I understand like maybe that's a profit issue or something like that, but I'll always drive home the concept of sparking, which in Grand Blue Fantasy, if you spend enough money, you just get to pick. You just pick what you want, and there's something to be said for guaranteed value. So I will really, really, really stress, like, I don't want a Wish Crystal with RNG. I want a Wish Crystal that lets me pick what I'm gonna get. And even if it's a Cavalier, and it's only a Cavalier with 6 champions in it, so the RNG there is the star rating, that's fine, that's progress. But 30 champions in a Crystal, it doesn't ring any, this is not any more exciting to me than your standard Cavalier. So yeah, I'll move on to signature stones. So signature stone wise, they acknowledge the issues in 6 stones. They talk about how they want to try to avoid or prevent the issues they've had with 5-star 6 stones that's going to be present with 6 stones, 6-star 6 stones. Because honestly, the biggest issue with signature stones is that you need them when you can't naturally dupe your champion, right? If you're naturally duping your champions and getting signature value that way, stones don't matter as much, right? They're still relevant, but they're not as prevalent. So they're going to implement a solution by updating solo events, and there's a lot of stuff they're doing here, actually. But overall, they aren't going to address the 6-star 6 stone yet, so that's still going to be an ongoing problem, at least for now. Hopefully they figure something out there as well. But I do like these 5-star 6 stones. So essentially, uncollected players will get 1 5-star 6 stone per 22-hour event, and Cavalier players will get 2, 1 crystal, 1 generic. So that's really, really awesome. And if they retune it so that every 22-hour event is actually feasible, rather than like right now where you are essentially getting like 2 or 3 out of 4, this is potentially for a Cavalier player like 60 5-star 6 stones in a month, not to mention the additional like 10 you get, and it's going to drastically reward players for playing the game. So I think this is really good. Even uncollected players are going to get like close to 30, even if it's RNG based and there's no generics. That's still a really, really good solution to the 5-star SIG values. They do mention they're looking to have this implemented in the game in August/September, and we can expect other things like changes to the solo crystal, goodbye XP boost, bigger rewards updates beyond just the 6 stones. So hopefully we'll get more information about that. But as far as solutions to the 6 stone problem, I think putting 30 more accessible 6 stones to uncollected players and 60 more accessible 6 stones to Cavalier players is honestly a perfectly reasonable amount, especially when you couple that with the changes in the 5-star crystal. If those launch at the same time, then I think it's even more reasonable, just because naturally if you're pulling out of a smaller pool of champions, fishing for a specific dupe or value, you're going to pull that more frequently, even if it's only in the long run. So I think that's a good change, and honestly, SIG level is something that adds a lot of longevity to the game. So while it can be frustrating to have like a SIG 140 cap Infinity War, you really want to SIG 200 him, it also gives you something to look forward to every time you pull 6 stones. Maybe that's just me, I do personally look forward to it, but I also hoard the heck out of my 6 stones, and I value the signature stone deals like the most. So I respect that. As a pay-to-play player, my outlook there might be vastly different than a free-to-play player, because I know 6 stones are way, way, way less accessible for free-to-play players. But I'm hoping, let me know, is 30 and 60 enough? Keep in mind, this is on a monthly basis, so you are getting a hefty amount of signature stones, especially when you consider like the signature stone deal that for money we're getting right now is 120 over the course of a month. So you're getting half of that, essentially for free every month. I don't know. To me, it just sounds like a pretty reasonable amount. And then their outro. So that is the Champions update, my thoughts and impressions. Let me know if there's something I didn't cover that you want my opinions on, maybe something I missed. But as always, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.